Hello and welcome back, everybody, to our show here. I've taken to calling it nuanced news, so that's what I'm going to go with for now. But I am open to suggestions because that name might suck for all I know. Anyways, I said the next video is going to be about healthcare, but I think a more timely discussion can be had about the Electoral College that we have here in the United States of America. I see a lot of commentary on it, and I'm not so sure that we all understand what it is exactly and why it exists. There's been a trendy sort of attitude about, let the people vote. Whoever the most people pick should be the president. And, well, we'll just dive into the arguments for and against the Electoral College here. We'll do a brief history on it, why it came to be. And, hopefully we all learn a little bit. We all get a little more nuanced, as is the goal. So, the first thing that's interesting about the Electoral College is it's not like the Founding Fathers got together and said, you know what? This is the awesome way to do things. Like, this is without a doubt how I want to run it. They didn't all unanimously agree, oh yeah, the Electoral College, that's bomb. That's the ticket right there. Nothing else would work. They were all very divided on it, on how to elect the president, because they were very wary of a pure democracy. So, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's just talk about what the Electoral College is first. So, it refers to the group of electors who get together every 4 years and they elect the president and the vice president. And this comes from Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which says, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So essentially every state, the amount of electoral votes you get, that equals the amount of electors that you have appointed. And it's based on how many senators and representatives your state has. That's how many electoral votes you get. So there's a total of 538 right now electoral votes out there to be gotten, to be getted, to secure. And so that means 538 electors. So every state, usually there's a bit of a 50-50 sort of split on who's electors. So Republicans select electors, Democrats select electors, and they're not, as the Constitution says, they can't be working for the government. They can't really be a part of the government. They have to be, separate. So they might be a firefighter, or you know what I mean, somebody who's probably done work for the party. Campaigning for the party a little bit, those sort of things, you get the honor of being an elector. So, that's what the Electoral College is, and their job is, once all the votes are counted up, every state, there's a winner for every state. Those electors, when they all meet, I believe they meet sometime in January, or they might meet sooner than that. Don't take my word for that. They all go in and they cast their votes. They're supposed to cast their votes for what the people in their state have decided. That's where it gets a little funky as well. Technically, you can be a faithless elector and you can cast your vote in a different way. So just because you're one of the 55 electors from California, theoretically you could show up at this meeting of all the electors and say, you know what, I'm putting my electoral vote on Trump. You could theoretically do that. It depends on the state. There are some states where you'll get fined. There's some states where it's highly illegal to be a faithless elector. I think there's some where you can't even do it. The original design was that you could be. So if you thought that a person was just so awful and that they would be a disgusting option for the seat of the president, as an elector, you technically oftentimes have the right to put your vote wherever you want. And so that's kind of an interesting thing right there. That doesn't happen very often. I believe it happened in 2016. I believe somebody who was supposed to cast it for Trump cast it for Clinton. So let's get into why they did this. So what I want to do is share with you some quotes from some of these founding people. So, John Witherspoon, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, this is what he had to say: "Pure democracy cannot subsist long, nor be carried far into the Department of State. It is very subject to caprice and the madness of popular rage." And Zephaniah Swift, this is the author of America's first legal text. They said, "It may generally be remarked that the more a government resembles a pure democracy, the more they abound with disorder and confusion." Benjamin Rush, another signer, says, "A simple democracy is one of the greatest evils." John Quincy Adams, son of John Adams, "The experience of all former ages had shown that of all human governments, democracy was the most unstable, fluctuating, and short-lived." So that's just a few of the quotes that we're going to look at today. And the whole point is the founders were very much skeptical of a pure democracy, as past philosophers have been as well. Because, and here's where it gets interesting to me. You know, the left is definitely the group calling most for the disbanding of the Electoral College. There's this video by Adam Ruins Everything, the Electoral College, for College Humor. And it's funny, you know, a lot of the points that are made against the Electoral College are exactly the point of why the founders wanted to do it. You know, so a lot of people say it's undemocratic. Well, here's the thing, is our country's never been a democracy, and that's important to understand. We have always been a constitutional republic. The founders didn't want us to be a democracy. And look, say what you want about the founders, but they were educated folks. And, you know, they were actually called upon, I believe it was Hamilton was called upon by Jefferson to actually research, you know, look into history, and a lot of them were very privy to history and different nations and what's gone wrong with them. And they saw pure democracy as majority rule. And this is where I get a little confused, you know, if you are a Democrat. Yeah, I can understand, you know, there are selfish reasons to want the Electoral College gone, being that essentially the major cities would decide every presidential election. You know, unless there's a huge culture shift or something where we have, you know, more people voting. You know, we only had, I think 130 million of the 300 plus million people that are in this country vote in this last election. So maybe, you know, I don't know, right? Maybe if we had almost full participation, maybe things would come out in a decent way. But in general, what the founders saw was that when you have these pure democracies, it's majority rule. The majority tramples the minority. A great quote, I don't know who it's attributed to. I think some people attribute it to Benjamin Franklin, although I'm not sure that's accurate. "Democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what to eat." You know, let that sink in. I dig that. I think it's important to understand that you know, you can say it's better, pure democracy, because it's just every vote counts exactly the same, but it's a ripe opportunity for mob rule. And it's funny too. I mean, the left is very concerned as we all should be, with minorities and the rights of minorities. But a lot of them want to disband this system that actually makes sure that people in the minority in states with smaller populations are allowed to have a better say in who we elect as president. You know, it's kind of funny. You'd think that they'd want to protect the minority in this case, right? And make sure that there isn't just a big trampling majority coming along every 4 years that just, nope, no matter what happens, these smaller states who don't have Los Angeles and Philadelphia and New York City in them and Chicago, these other states are going to get screwed in a way. So let's look at some more quotes. Noah Webster: in democracy there are commonly tumults and disorders. Therefore, a pure democracy is generally a very bad government. It is often the most tyrannical government on earth. Gouverneur Morris, signer and penman of the Constitution: we have seen the tumult of democracy terminate, as it has everywhere terminated, in despotism. Democracy, savage and wild, thou who wouldst bring down the virtuous and wise to the level of folly and guilt. And then Samuel Adams: it does not require a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen to set brush fires in people's minds. So these are just all, quotes. And like I said, it's not like they all agreed the Electoral College was the best way to do things, but they did all generally agree that a pure democracy for president would just lead to mob rule, the trampling of the minority. And I've heard a lot of people talk about that the Electoral College is racist, because these small states that have a lot of white people, they benefit. What I would say to that is pretty simple to me is, look, if black people were living more rurally, and let's just say a state like Wyoming was full of black people, the rules would work the same. It was designed without race in mind. The Electoral College itself, of course, I'm not trying to say that the 3/5 compromise didn't happen or anything like that, but yeah, let's read a few more quotes and think about it a little bit more. So this is Alexander Hamilton, everyone's favorite play person. I haven't seen the play or anything, or the musical, I should say, but I hear it's pretty good. Anyway, so he writes: talents for low intrigue and the little arts of popularity may alone suffice to elevate a man to the first honors in a single state. But it will require other talents and a different kind of merit to establish him in the esteem and confidence of the whole Union, or of so considerable a portion of it as would be necessary to make him a successful candidate for the distinguished office of President of the United States. So right there, he kind of nails it, at least in my opinion. As and I'm not saying the Electoral College shouldn't go away ever. I'm just saying, we can't just jump on all these blue check-marked bandwagons on Twitter and just start firing off about the way this country was designed. It was designed with a lot of forethought and a lot of anxiety. It was designed very anxiously to try and make sure that it doesn't fall into some sort of tyrannical monarchy, right? And I dig this because, look, a populist president, somebody who could come in with and just be the popular guy, the popular woman, the popular whomever. In a direct democracy, if they just do enough pandering and not enough, and they just say all the right things, they could probably win the popular vote. Another thing is, too, as a candidate in a pure democracy, they'd really only have to visit Los Angeles, maybe San Francisco, New York City, Philadelphia, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami. They'd have to visit these big cities, essentially, and just say whatever they want to hear. That's all they'd have to do. Whatever you guys want in these big cities, That's my platform. Please sway the popular vote in my direction. But look, the Electoral College makes it so that every state's important. And a lot of people don't like the fact that it ends up being that swing states are deciding things. Look, swing states change. They change over time. It's not always the same states, although a few of them do make a lot of, they reoccur a lot. But swing states change. It's not always Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania. They've changed over the years, and you can look at electoral maps and kind of see that trend there. It is of great importance in a republic not only to guard the society against the oppression of its rulers, but to guard one part of the society against the injustice of the other part. Different interests necessarily exist in different classes of citizens. If a majority be united by a common interest, the rights of the minority will be insecure. There are but two methods of providing against this evil. The one, by creating a will in the community independent of the majority, that is, of the society itself. The other, by comprehending in the society so many separate descriptions of citizens as will render an unjust combination of a majority of the whole very improbable, if not impracticable. As a president, you can't just cater to the people who talk the loudest. You have to find the people who are quietly disheartened. You have to find different groups of people, and you have to make your platform work for people across the country to win this office, which I think is a beautiful thing. I mean, you could really just see big cities vote for a candidate in a popular vote decision, and it always comes out that way. And then you leave people in rural areas screwed. You really do. And let's get to our last quote here. A common passion or interest will, in almost every case, be felt by a majority of the whole. A communication and concert result from the form of government itself, and there is nothing to check the inducements to sacrifice the weaker party or an obnoxious individual. Hence it is that such democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. Just speaking to the fact that democracies can be very unstable. And they can tilt towards tyranny very easily, right? And we think about that quote again. Democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what to eat. Well, if the majority decides, 51% of people decide that we all should do a certain thing or behave a certain way, or that something is outlawed, the 49% sacrifice their rights, their willingness to do this thing because of pure democracy. So, it's a pretty idea, pure democracy, and I think we have a lot of bias going around about it. I know my professors and teachers throughout my life have always spoken ill of the Electoral College, which makes sense. I do believe, I know for a fact that there is much bias in the politics of teachers and professors. They tend to be very liberal. In fact, a good amount actually identify as Marxist, believe it or not. Professors, I don't know about high school teachers or anything when it comes to that. So I actually found on my Google Drive an essay I had to write about the Electoral College. I found it recently, and it's me just tearing the Electoral College apart. It's funny, I read it now and I think it's the dumbest, just most simple-minded sort of short essay that a person could write, to be like, just count up the votes and whoever gets the most votes wins. And, now my views on it have changed. I think Electoral College is important. And it hasn't prevented either party from doing well. The Electoral College hasn't. It works for both parties. They both win elections, often. So, I do think, if the Republicans won every 4 years all the time, then I think it'd be safe to say we might have to do something about this Electoral College, or vice versa, if Democrats won all the time. But as it stands, it keeps things It keeps things fairly balanced. And in a big, people like to hate on the fact that we have a very slow-moving government. Honestly, I believe that's probably the best kind of government you can have. I mean, fast-moving governments that are willing to just jump into big policy changes, I don't think that's a smart way to go. And, there are good points to make about how insane some elections would be without the Electoral College. You want to talk about John F. Kennedy versus Richard Nixon. The difference in the popular vote margin was actually only 118,574 votes, which across the whole nation, that's a pretty small amount. Kennedy decisively won the Electoral College, however. But you got to think. How easy would it be to try and challenge and tear apart a popular vote that's won by close margins? And, only 118,000 votes. And imagine if a popular vote got closer than that. And then all of a sudden, both candidates, or the losing candidates, probably filing a lawsuit in every single district in every single state in the country, trying to find, fraudulent votes for the other candidate, or votes that have been missed by him or herself, to try and tilt it. Because if it's a small margin, you can really do some things there to try and to sway it back in your direction. But overall, look, for it or against it, my point is, let's not jump to conclusions. Let's not be overtly biased. I really wish people on the right and the left would stop they find these hyperbolic tweets by people with blue check marks and Instagram people with blue check marks, and they just share it. They don't look into it. You can tell they don't look into it because I've seen a few in this election where it would really just take a simple browse on the old Google to see that the person is not telling the whole truth. And so we have all these people sharing these things about how the Electoral College is this or it's that, and that it's racist because Wyoming is so many white people in Wyoming, and each vote supposedly counts more because the amount of Electoral College votes they get. But look, it would function the exact same if Wyoming was full of black people, as I said before. I don't think it's not really a race thing. I mean, it was designed when there were hardly any states, first of all. So, look, you can say that there's some legacy issues with policies all around. Obviously, this country had sinned greatly in the past, as well as, most countries have a lot of blood in their past, a lot of gross things, but we live here, so we talk about the issues here. I understand that. But this Electoral College really just benefits you if you don't live in a big city. If you are anywhere outside of a big city, it benefits you, and it benefits the minority in that way. I know that we like to call them flyover states, but those are people too, and there's plenty of Democrats out there too. We need to stop getting so emotional about all this stuff, about politics. Oh, but legend, it's people's lives we're talking about, and I just want to change the world all the time, and everything is messed up, and there's so much evil around every corner. And I hear you. Nothing's peachy. Nothing's perfect. There's always improvements to be made, and we should all strive towards those. But the amount of emotion I see, you understand, hopefully you understand, psychologically, if you're making decisions while you're upset or angry, you're probably not looking at the full picture at all. So there's all these calls, disband the Electoral College, this and that. Just think about it a little bit. The Electoral College wasn't thrown together just because, LOL, haha, like Let's see how they like this in 400 years. Funny idea. Funny idea, Jefferson. I dig it. Just totally mess with them. No, it was designed purposefully to protect people in the intellectual minority. To protect the minority, whether that be Republican or Democrat. So look, the biggest argument against the Electoral College is that it is undemocratic. But what's funny is the biggest argument for keeping the Electoral College is that it is anti-democratic. We don't. I think we should be very cautious about desiring a pure democracy. And I don't just say that as somebody who leans conservative and wants to see conservative presidents all the time. I don't. As I've said before, if you follow me on Instagram, as I've said before, and I think I've mentioned it in this show as well, I think conservatives and liberals create a very fine balance together. And it might be slow moving, and it might be hard to watch sometimes, but at the end of the day, we're a young country, but we have a constitution that really tries. We do, and there's no doubt about that. And every day it seems we get closer and closer to the ideal. Violent crime is down, rape is down, racism is much better nowadays than it was in the 1960s, 1950s. We're on our way up. Young people are not racist for the most part. And we're in a good direction. We're moving in a good direction. So, yes, there's a lot of bureaucratic sludge that needs to be waded through every time we're trying to do something. But it was designed to be that way. It was designed to be the complete opposite of a monarchy, right? I mean, they were rebelling against King George. So, in a complete monarchy, right, the king can just say, this is what the taxes are going to be, bada bing, bada boom. This is how healthcare is going to work, bada bing, bada boom. The whole point was to be the opposite of that. The whole point was to be people in government saying, I want the tax plan to be this. And then other people being like, oh, I want to be this. And you create compromises. And I think we have a lot of very good intentioned people in Washington, D.C. I mean, a lot of crooks, too. And definitely a lot of people who are bought and paid for. But for the most part, people want what's best for this country. And, they say the best compromise is the compromise where both parties walk away upset. Because if one person gets too much of their way, it's probably... you're starting to tilt towards tyranny. You're starting to tilt towards a majority rule over the minority. And I think we can all agree that the majority should not rule over the minority. And I don't think there's any arguments that make sense to me as to why we should get rid of the Electoral College. I mean, if you're a Democrat right now, it worked for the presidential election, right? So... look, it bounces back and forth. Power changes hands. And yeah, you can say, well, it's antiquated. I mean, we really send 538 electors into a meeting and they cast their votes. And sure, maybe we could get rid of all the fanfare, all the sort of the tradition of that, and maybe just simplify it and have the electors cast the votes from wherever their state they're in. I don't know, But the point is, it's not an awful thing. It's not perfect, but you want to talk about compromise. Not many of the founding fathers walked away when they decided to do the Electoral College. Not many of them walked away smiling. Not many of them walked away completely happy because they knew it was a compromise. It was a way to try and make sure that America doesn't tilt towards tyranny, that populist sort of monarch can't just seize power through the majority. It was to ensure that 51% of this country can't just consistently overrule the other 49%. And I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's that bad. And, hopefully you ponder these quotes that I've set forward by our founders, and you think about it yourself. And but keep challenging yourself, everybody. Keep looking into things. Please stop just sharing hyperbolic blue check marks all over the place. You're not getting anywhere intellectually. You're not even saying what you think. You're just parroting other people's viewpoints, and it's cringy, man. It's cringy. Left and right, it is cringy when people are just constantly posting blue check marked people that they haven't looked into it. They don't put their own thoughts forward. And and another side note: stop unfollowing people that you disagree with. If anything, nowadays it is the most important thing to do to continue to listen to and follow people that you do not agree with. These we might have a turbulent next few months with all the lawsuits put forward by the Trump campaign. And I think it's important that we all remember that we are Americans. We are beautiful. We are fine people for the most part. We all want this country to be better. We all want things to change for the better. And I think we are in a good direction, right? But and I will say this, especially to liberals, you need to keep up that anti-monopoly way of thinking when it comes to businesses, when it comes to tech businesses. We can't give them a break. I know liberals are very good about criticizing big oil and big banks and all that. But when it comes to big tech, I find that they are remarkably silent. And as we have just exited the most tumultuous election that I've heard of in the United States, it's important to keep in mind that how we get our information. All the major companies, Google, Amazon, you name it, they donated to Joe Biden's campaign. And a lot of these fact-checking notifications you'll see on posts, they are run by people with bias. And on our show, we do not like bias, do we? No. We are free-thinking individuals trying to find a nuanced path through complicated things. And what isn't helpful is big tech. So I want all you left-leaning people out there, keep up that anti-monopoly attitude. It's beautiful. It's great. I understand why you have it. And keep it up with, put that pressure on big tech. Because they have censored people on the left and right, but mostly people on the right. And their fact checkers, it's so funny, they have these ratings in fact checking too, and if you actually read them, where it's like partially true or mostly false or somewhat true, whatever. And it's so funny though, because people will just count ones that say partially false or somewhat true. They'll count them as if it's a lie. And that's sort of one of those simple little subtle ways that these fact checking organizations can paint somebody as a big liar. It can paint different sources as big liars by saying, oh, well, that's mostly false, or that's somewhat true, or whatever it is, right? And so just when you're browsing out there, just be wary. Be wary of it. Question everything. I think liberals, especially in the 60s, they did such a good job with questioning everything. And I think nowadays they don't do as good of a job questioning everything. If they agree with the thing that's being put forward on CNN or through Snapchat, the Snapchat news, Instagram, viral posts, things like that, they'll go along with it. Not all of them, not everybody all the time, but we have a big problem with critical thinking. And frankly, look, just because your political science professor said something that that said something that they believe or think doesn't mean that that's the right thing. Doesn't mean that they are not displaying bias. And so I say that because there are a lot of people who went to college or go to college and they think that their professors are like the cream of the crop, that they are extremely intelligent through and through. And of course, a lot of them are. But that doesn't mean that they don't have bias. And that doesn't mean that you can just repeat the things your political science professor says about the Electoral College and make it true, because these things are a lot more complicated than, oh, it's undemocratic, oh, well, it's, anyways, I'm just going to keep rambling if I don't stop this pretty soon. So my friends, my teammates, my comrades, my free thinking homie G's, please keep up the questioning. Please read things you don't agree with. And as always, send me sources, send me articles about the Electoral College, and we can do maybe an updated part 2 if I get enough stuff going. And we can dive into it again and see where I've made mistakes. Because I have no doubt that I am intellectually flawed. I am a human being. So my main point is, everybody chill out. Everybody chill out. We've got a pretty good country here, whether we want to admit it or not. And it is slow moving and irritating by design, so that power is never too far thrust into one side's hands. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Y'all are some beautiful people. Thank you for listening to me ramble once again. This time it was about the Electoral College. I promise we will go into healthcare. That's going to be an even longer podcast for sure. There's a lot to get into when it comes to healthcare. But anyways, this has been a brief history of the Electoral College and some quotes from some of our founders about pure democracy, which was what the Electoral College was designed to fight against, in truth. So, hope you've enjoyed. I hope I've broadened your viewpoints on the Electoral College, and I hope we can all continue to think critically and to question everything, and to not just parrot other people's little hyperbolic statements all over the place, and actually think for ourselves. All right, guys, I love you. I love you very much, and peace.